Here.
Santana. Present. Harsh.
Here.
House Jones. Jones.
Here.
McCormick. Spencer. Mr. Chairman, you have a vote.
Thank you again. Ordinance number 166-2024 by council members Hairston and Griffin by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Community Development to apply for and accept grants from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2024 under the Title I of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 for the 2024 Federal Home Investment Partnerships Act Program, Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Program, and authorizing contracts and other expenditures. All right, we're back here for day 2. We're going to begin. Do you have another presentation for today?
Yes, Chair, we do have another presentation. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that
There's no presentation?
I'm sending it to them, but I want to make sure that you have the amendment. The ordinance 166 was amended with the current numbers. I know we discussed it yesterday. I just want to make sure that we cover our bases.
Come on. Thank you. Yep. All right.
I'm not sure if Law's here, but
You know what is from laws here? Yeah. They know we start at 9 o'clock. Director Griffin, are you watching? Get your people up here. Okay, we'll go through it.
thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilman. I just want to make sure that occurs because I know that can trip people up sometimes.
I appreciate you. All right, so you just sent over the,
I did. So, Council, it's just the one addition that for the presentation today is a map showing the regional areas that our community engagement specialists that'll be housed within City Hall will be located. And with your permission, we would like to sort of juggle the agenda a little bit. We do have guests here from our department, and I'd like to start with the community engagement specialists portion, which is last on the agenda.
okay, we can start there.
Okay.
We'll support our guests.
All right. Thank you to the chair, to the committee. Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, here for second day. Spoke with Director Hernandez this morning. She wished the team well and hopes that everything goes as well as it did yesterday. So again, my name is Assistant Director Tony Scott, along with Assistant Director Mikhail Wackers. We assist Director Hernandez in overseeing the City of Cleveland's Department of Community Development. Thank you to the chair for allowing us to switch our order. We're going to lead off with our Bureau of Community Programming and speak about our community engagement efforts. I did want to make a few introductions. We have quite a few new additions to our team. If I may, at the table with us today is our first day, so we're breaking her in fully, is our new Bureau Chief of Community Programming, and that's Chief Aaron Miller-Tate. You want to say anything?
Hello. Happy to be here.
So we'll just have her up here just so that she gets the exposure. But I did want to introduce members of her staff that are in here with us. Some are longstanding and some are new. So I'm going to introduce the team. We have our Manager of Consumer Affairs, John Mahoney.
All right, Brother John.
Right. Not a stranger to this group.
Not at all.
Ms. Brett Parsons is the manager of the community engagement team, so not only does she oversee the CESs in the respective wards, but she also was building out her team internally, which we have 3 of the 5 members that will be part of that team. So, Ms. Hatcher, we have Mr. Kurgis and Mr. Burton. And so I just wanted them to, you to be able to see them. You'll be able to see them in your wards, the ward meetings. So wanted you to be able to put faces to names. So I'm going to excuse them so that they can
I've
get.
seen that young man. I don't mean to point. I've seen him somewhere before. Yeah.
I'm sure it was something doing exemplary.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
team, thank you.
All right.
So,
Thank you all.
so,
All right, since we're here, we can jump right into it.
all right.
Director. So there's no presentation or slides like we had yesterday for the other sections?
we'll go over the numbers. The community engagement specialists will be paid for with CDBG funds. The community engagement specialists in the CDCs are still paid with general fund, but we've really found that that is a good complement to the department, is very effective in understanding what's happening in the neighborhoods, and an extension of our programming. And we really want to make sure that we continue to strengthen that. We did push for general fund for the community engagement specialists within the department. It's being considered, but at this time, we felt it was too important to wait, so we decided to use CDBG public service dollars to be able to fund this expansion. But for the budget, why don't you go through the numbers of NDA, public service, and then community engagement specialists?
Yes.
Can you clarify what page you are?
Director, what page are
So we are-
going from?
In the book, it's 5.8. We
last
also
page.
be looking at the budget summaries on 2.1 to 2.4.
All right, 5.8, and then 2.1 to 2.4, absolutely. Thank you for that.
So as you can see, the community engagement, we've set aside a budget of $369,000 that'll pay for the 5 positions, of which a number of hired, 3 are onboarded, I believe.
Yes, 3 are onboarded. To the chair, 3 of the community engagement specialists are already onboarded. The 4th starts next week, and there will be an internal promotion or a lateral to be the assistant manager.
What was that about the assistant manager, director?
There's going to be a lateral. One of our assistant managers, Robert Gearman, who's over compliance, will be transitioning to the assistant manager in this role, but we're holding off on that until the new compliance manager starts and that there's an acceptable transition. So the new compliance manager starts June 10th.
Okay,
June
got
10th.
it. Got it. Was there anything further?
Not in the community engagement specialist.
Okay. Yeah.
So are these community engagement workers going to interact with residents in the neighborhood? Is that their role?
To the chair, yes, Councilwoman.
Okay, so is there, I know that you said there's 2 more coming that are on board? or-
There's one that starts next week, and then the assistant manager will transition within the next month and a half.
Got it. And so I have to ask, is
course.
there any bilingual staff that were hired to do the community engagement piece?
No, to the chair, to the council, no, unfortunately not. You know, like I know, that those are the ideal candidates that we always look for, but we aren't always the most competitive in that space.
Have you all tried to work with the councilwoman to see if she can identify somebody in the neighborhood, maybe?
To the chair, to the councilwoman, not specifically, other than just sharing our posts and really trying to put them out in the community, really pushing through our LinkedIns, our personal LinkedIns, even our personal Instagrams, trying to figure out whatever that we can do. The
find somebody.
councilwoman knows my significant other, so she knows it's important to us to try and personally, in my Tony Scott capacity, to build bridges between the black and brown communities. So whenever I'm doing things in the work capacity, she tries to assist me. But we've not identified candidates that have applied for these positions and successfully matriculated into being hired.
Gotcha. No, I'm sure we appreciate that because, the Councilwoman's ward, in the city of Cleveland, a high level of Latinos who reside here in Cleveland. And when we want to get more black and brown people involved, you got to have folks who can speak their language, who can interact with them. And not saying that a lot of them understand English and speak English. It's just about having somebody they can connect with, right? Just like you having a young person who can connect, many times better with a young person and vice versa. So, it works that way. So maybe the councilwoman, you touch bases with Assistant Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and, you know, if there's any open positions, I would love to, like, circle back on that. But, you know, just going back to your point, what happens is community engagement positions, you're interacting with residents.
Absolutely.
And if they come to my meetings, then my staff and I are the ones that end up interpreting. And so, you know, I was just one out of 5, you know, would be helpful.
Well,
Thank you.
to the chair, to the councilwoman, I fully appreciate that. I welcome any qualified resumes that you have. We as a department look for it. We do have positions. We're consistently hiring. People retire, people move on to other opportunities. So we're constantly looking. So please feel free to yourself, to the community at large. If you have qualified candidates, bilingual or otherwise, get the resumes to us.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Director. Councilwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I didn't bring this up yesterday when we were receiving the overview of the department and the reorg and the changes. And, you know, I would, I would say that because this is a time of transition, you will continue, through our chair, I want to say to the community development team, you will need to continue to bring us along to understand, frankly, the new lingo and the new changes. And I really want to make that point here because community engagement specialists are what we have been forever calling healthy home specialists. And that, I'm sorry, I think that's confusing. I mean, I think you need to be explicit about, we are talking about what we've called healthy home specialists for years, and now we're calling them community engagement specialists, just because we all deal, there was a whole slide yesterday dedicated to acronyms and lingo and whatever structures. It's a lot, and I just think if we're going to partner and you want to bring us along and have us understand your functions and your team and have us we frankly all need to be in total alignment. I think legislative, executive, we, you know, we serve the function of approving budgets, but we need to understand how things are carried out so we can also let our community members know. So for the good of the order, I want to clarify for all of our colleagues here and for anyone listening, when we're referring to community engagement specialists, those are the healthy home specialists that we are no longer calling healthy home specialists. We are now calling community engagement specialists. Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, that is correct. To add confusion to all that, the reason why we also shifted away is that we also get a competitive grant called Healthy Homes from HUD. And we also get a competitive grant from HUD called Healthy Homes. And you put that on top of Healthy Homes positions and Healthy Home programs that are either general fund or federally funded, it becomes very convoluted. We try to clarify and mean what we are intending. So community engagement is what we intend to do. That's why we've identified them as community engagement specialists. So hopefully that why the nuance shift, not a departure from the intent.
That's good. I appreciate that Assistant Director answered my question with a smile on his face. I really appreciate that. But I want to also take a moment then to clarify, because we've had extensive discussion about community engagement specialists, formerly healthy home specialists. We've talked about it a lot at this table. So I want to clarify the other piece that I think is important that colleagues understand. Based on the last time we picked up this topic, most of these community engagement specialists are on the payroll at community development corporations, even though their positions are funded by the city. However, there are some neighborhoods that do not have coverage, for, if you will, of a community development corporation. Therefore, there are other community engagement specialists. Can you please just take a moment through the chair to unpack the structure of the community engagement specialists, so we're getting citywide coverage, and how many people are we talking about? Through the chair.
So to the chair, to the councilwoman, I appreciate that distinction. So I do want to make it clear for everyone. We are talking about, for all intensive purposes, two separate entities. And let me clarify for it. As the councilwoman stated, Healthy Homes is what historically has been noted with the 14, I believe we're at 12 right now. Let me see if I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 out of 14 available spots that are actually funded and are housed at the CDCs. To the councilwoman's point, there are some CDCs that do not have these CESs, these community engagement specialists, which is why we now have created this internal regional CESs, which what we're calling internally, just internally. And essentially those 4 people, 3 of whom you saw here and the other one is incoming, their role will be mobile. Their role will be in the communities, at your events, at other city events, at other community-based events, at trying to increase our staffing presence where the citizens are, in the libraries, in the schools, wherever they can be of assistance in trying to provide our programs, information about our programs, being mobile with tablets to be able to assist the citizens right there on the spot with being able to complete things, so complete applications. So the internal CESs, even though they're housed here, will be very much out in the community to try to fill those gaps, to try to be in those spaces where there may not be a CES inside of a CDC. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
I'm getting closer.
That's fine.
So and that was helpful, and I think I'll circle back to another point in a moment. So are those 4 new positions the ones that Assistant Director Wackers was referencing as now being funded through block grant? The 14 positions, Healthy Homes, formerly Healthy Homes, now CES, have been funded through general fund. And what I want to make sure I understand is these 4 additional mobile, flexible, the ones who were here just moments ago, are being funded through CDBG. Is that accurate, through the chair?
To the chair, to the councilwoman, that's correct.
So, okay. I mean, here's what I gotta say is that I'm almost, and I know that our chair here charged myself and my colleague with trying to go deeper on healthy homes, community engagement, to make sure that we are understanding what we're funding. I think as this moves along, and especially as we move towards that single intake application that we mentioned yesterday, I didn't use that lingo properly, but the universal application, I think we need like a teach-in. Okay, here's why, or something. And I'm volunteering myself, and I will ask other. We need to come together, because here's why. There was a vacancy, I think, for 2 years or more. There was no supervisor for those healthy home specialists. They were kind of scattered to the winds. They kind of did their own thing. They assimilated information randomly based on what they were individually picking up. Out there, there was not a lot of structure for them because that vacancy that was created. Now you guys are creating the structure, you're creating the hierarchical whatever, you're building your team, you have 4 who are citywide, you have 12 who are at CDCs. I am still not convinced that all of those individuals are completely on message and sharing the exact same information uniformly for our residents citywide. And I also think that council office staff would benefit, like my EA and me. We would benefit from also hearing this clear, uniform message of how do people get help. Ultimately, all this is about is how do our residents get help with repairing their homes. And the need is so great. So I know the intention here is to move towards helping more people and showing up where people are in their neighborhoods. But there's just been a lack of uniformity for so long, and a lack of guidance and structure for most of these folks are young professionals, they're developing professionals, they are early in their careers, and they need to be developed. And those of us who've been around a while need a brush up. So as you all are finalizing these new structures, onboarding these new people, getting new tools in place, can we, at this summer, and I'm volunteering Mr. Chair, I hope it's okay that I'm volunteering myself for this.
I volunteered you a month ago. It's okay. So you still, you good?
All right,
That's
I'm re-volunteering myself.
Voluntold, that's right.
Just to make sure that we are all marching forward in the same direction, and that when we, our council staff, or you are out in the community talking to residents, we're all saying the same darn thing, because I don't think we're there yet. So my takeaway in terms of this budget point, putting a pin in the budget point of this conversation, is that we are funding 4 new positions, CES positions who are mobile citywide through block grant. And then I will hold additional questions as we proceed, Mr. Chair.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great points. Yes, please. You know, as we talked about, we need to dig a little bit deeper on this subject, and so that's why I asked you, and I forget who else did I ask? Councilman Harsh. Yes, to dig a little bit deeper with the department on these positions. All right. So let me ask you this before we move on to Councilman Harsh. How does these positions bump up against our public service cap? Where do we fall?
So, through the chair, these costs are incorporated into that cap, so.
That we saw in the
Correct.
that were presented yesterday. So they're already factored in.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Councilman Harsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to keep beating this drum. I was there when this project was created. None of the originators are still here. This was a project from people that were before us, both in the city hall side and the nonprofit side. It's essentially an orphaned project. I've said it before, I'll continue to advocate one step beyond what Councilwoman Spencer is saying. We should abolish this project. We should offer all these people the chance to be rehired under building and housing, and they should become our exterior housing inspectors. We badly need exterior housing inspection. They seem fine folks. I have no objection to the quality of character of people. Let's keep them city employees, but let's move them over to building and housing where they can do the exterior inspections that every ward needs. And coincidentally, this time in a year and a half, there will be 15 wards, and I believe there's 14 people currently hired. We'd only need one more. They could get union jobs. They would have a pension. It would be a long-term benefit for these folks, and we could actually get some of the work done that we know we need done and not have to keep trying to fit this round peg into a square hole. That's all.
All right, Councilman. Thank you. Any further questions? You had something else, Councilwoman? You sure? Okay.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll just say, as a case in point, Councilman Kelly, Ward 15 and Ward 11, share a healthy home specialist. It's not clear that the Ward 11 office has they don't really have a working relationships with their healthy home specialist. This is just a case in point that community engagement specialist, formerly healthy home specialist. This is just a case in point. There are so many gaps. And I've heard Councilman Harsh make this point many times. I think that bears further discussion. I think they're very different types of positions. One is meant to be interacting with residents, very high touch, very relationship based, very empathetic, knowledgeable, high level of technical expertise, in addition to the ability to work with our residents. To Councilwoman Santana's point, that language gap is a concern. So I just think there's a lot of really important questions here about how ultimately, with hard choices and limited resources, how are we going to best serve our residents and our communities? So, all right, thank you.
Got it. Yes, Assistant Director.
Thank you. To the chair, I just want to, both points noted, I appreciate the distinction in the positions. The roles of the inspectors, having been at building and housing, are a completely different thing, but I do understand your point. I don't want to speak for building and housing, but I do believe that they presented in February some very aggressive plans to increase their staffing and to be in the community. I don't want to speak for building and housing. So, but I do want to go on record that we are proud of this initiative as it's existed. We do appreciate historically that there have been some challenges, but that is why we've done the hiring and the programming that we have. Very confident in Brett to lead the team. And as of today, again, we have a bureau chief that I believe will be very instrumental in us doing what we need to with this program so that everyone, citizens and council alike, see its value, and that we're able to have more touch points with the citizens and be right there to help navigate through the challenging applications that we talked about yesterday.
Got it. Thank you, Director. And listen, absolutely, this body, believes in the position because we created it. And, we just want to see it, flourish and succeed in the way that we intended for it to succeed.
Yes, sir.
And for the individuals to do the work that we intended for them to do in our neighborhoods. So that's why I'm asking our esteemed members of this committee to weigh in with the department to ensure that what our initial mission was for these positions continues, or we find a way to elevate those positions in their mission. Yes, Director.
Just to chime in on that, so two things. One, given the past challenges that community engagement specialists had, they've been extremely productive. We routinely get around 20,000 inspections a year, exterior, and that is valuable information in us sort of developing our programs and seeing where we need to deploy resources. They're also interacting with around 4,000 households or families or individuals, seniors, every year. And that was with sort of the structure previously, but with the reorg, we understood very clearly that there needed to be more sort of oversight and management, exactly the things that you guys understand. And that's the reason why we have the reorganization. It's the reason why we brought on Aaron. It's the reason why we hired Brett. I think we are in a position really to take that success and really take it further. And at the end of the day, the goal of these individuals is really not enforcement. It's always been a concern that if you start put these people into building and housing, you're going to have a hammer hitting a nail problem, as opposed to trying to understanding that every problem needs a different solution, and we need people who can be who understand that there are resources in City Hall, resources with partners, and not just view it as a violation that needs to be corrected at all costs, detrimental to the property owner.
Sure. Appreciate it, Director. And, for me, I see this role, the new, what do we call them in ED? Investment, represented
regional,
neighborhood investment individuals, plus property maintenance inspectors. I see the three, really kind of working together, right? And I know that, I can go either way, whether these folks become PMIs or they stay, community engagement inspection, because I understand, where they can fit on one end, where also where they work well on the other end. But I really see those three roles really working together, so I hope the two departments, interact with each other, differently than maybe the departments have in the past, because those three roles and being hyper-focused on the neighborhoods can really, turn around some things in our communities by working together from the economic development side, from the community development side, and the building and housing position as well. So, all right, anything further for the community engagement specialist? All right, and so, Director, Councilman Plinzig and I will be looking, to have a discussion soon about where one of these regionals fit and to help us. Because as you know, that our northeast side, Collinwood, we do not have a functioning CDC at the moment. Famicos has stepped in and has been our savior, like a lot of communities and so many times. And we need to, one of these fine individuals who you presented today, really need to get them deployed into the neighborhood, as soon as possible, because we desperately need the help over in the northeast side. All right.
To the chair, so noted.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. If there's no further questions on community engagement, we'll continue to move along. We'll go back up to the top of the list, and we'll start with the NDA, Neighborhood Development Activity Grants. And for the body, Mrs. Tail, earlier in the year, she did send out the metrics, the dashboard to everyone, and I believe, Tyson, she sent them again today?
The
Accomplishments.
in March,
Yes. Accomplishments in March,
the dashboards are going to go out later on today.
and dashboards you will get your dashboards today. And the dashboards were created to kind of show us where the individual CDCs and where they were in their progress. But you can go back to your email in March and you can pull the metrics that were presented to each of the council members. And I believe some information has started to come in already as a refresh for members. Okay?
So just a quick overview of the budget numbers. Neighborhood development grants, we're holding that line item flat, 7.6 million. There is a sizable amount of unspent funds, some of that for closing out this year's grants with CECs, but there is carryover that we're seeing that's sort of building up of 4.8 million. I raise that only in that we really, this partnership between CD and council is very important. We have certain spending requirements. So if you have programs you're sort of saving money for, we need to understand what that looks like. There might be ways where we can approach it differently that won't cause timeliness issues in our spending with HUD. Happy to answer any questions about NDA. I know it's really a funding source for the council and your initiatives, but we are happy to answer any questions.
Got it. And you, Director, I'm going back to the budget number. From chapter...
2.3, is that you're looking for the line item budget?
Yep. There we go, I'm coming. No, it was the
book page.
yeah, it was in chapter 2 where it has the the budget total.
So 5.1 is the page that just is for NDA. On the bottom of page 2.3 is the line item of NDA within the entire department budget.
All right, I got it. Okay. And yesterday there was the NDA number per ward. There was a number given out yesterday. What's the NDA number per ward?
It's 493,000 is how the 760 is divided. That takes out 200,000 for senior transportation. So,
And that's always how we've done it. We've taken out senior transportation
Correct.
first, and then we divided the rest across the 17
that's correct.
wards. Okay.
Oh, 4.3.
All right. Questions from the committee? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, can the distinguished, the director clarify, so off of the NDA, there's 200,000 taken from every single elected official for,
It's an aggregate of 200,000. So it's 200,000 divided by 17
so is
is
that taken out of every
Correct.
ward's NDA fund?
correct.
Okay, so right off the top, there's 200, and how do we know how it's being spent in terms of transportation?
So typically the senior transportation, they receive a $400,000 contract. So in addition to the $200,000 from council, when they apply for social service grants, they typically get around $400,000. It all depends how competitive the requests are and how much funding we have, but it's averaged around $400,000.
And who gets it, Mr. Chairman? Who actually gets it?
Senior transportation is an organization. They provide point-to-point rides for seniors. It is.
And they work for us?
They're a nonprofit, so they're a partner, but they serve all of Cuyahoga County. They even go down to, I think, Summit and on occasion as well.
And they currently, do they do a good job?
So they are monitored. They provide, I would say, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but thousands of rides every year. We have worked very closely and looked at their accomplishments and how they're billing for rides in a way that was very productive over the last couple of years. I think we're getting a lot more value out of our money than we used to. They get a lot of money from many municipalities. Their biggest contributor is Cleveland. As a result, we've been able to look at how they charge versus other communities, and found that at the time there was a discrepancy, and therefore we made sure that that discrepancy was alleviated in our favor. But it is a resource. Seniors get free or reduced rides to medical appointments and quality of life services.
I see. And so do you have, like, Mr. Chairman, to the director, like a chart that shows, you know, where the usership is at? And then, Mr. Chairman, if the director could make available who, what, where, unless you want to tell us now, who do we contact? Do you have the head of the organization? That information is important. Want to make sure, Mr. Chairman, that the senior citizens I represent know totally about this program and can access it.
So what I want to do, Councilman, actually go a step further. So I'm going to ask the department to provide us, give us a more detailed printout or report out of the number of rides that they provided, you know, and if we can break that down by ward, I would appreciate that. And also the contact and how they schedule appointments to ride as well. And get that over to Mr. Titram, please, and we can get it out to all the members. That way we can have a more complete picture of what's happening with the senior transportation program.
And it'd be good too, Mr. Chairman, because the council is at 200,000, what, times what, 17? Was it $3.4 million?
No. So it's just $200,000 split
Yeah.
between 17 wards.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well,
So it's 7.6 for the NDA grants. You take 200,000 off, that's 7.4, then that's divided among the 17 wards. So you get the
Okay.
400,000
I
plus
thought
dollars.
they were running a heck of a trip with so I'm thinking 3.4 million, they're really doing a job.
Gotcha.
But with 200,000, I'm
Yes,
not so
sir.
sure.
Right.
So it would be good to know that, and then also, Mr. Chairman, depending on how good they are, I know that we used to have a service in our neighborhood with RTA. RTA has since then cut a lot of the services out from the east side. The last time they were here, and so we would like to get an increase because, you know, we have a lot of senior citizens in the neighborhood, so if we could use that program and it could help us out, would be very appreciative, Mr. Chairman, to the director. No further questions on that particular piece.
Got it. And also in that request, we also like to know how many rides have been denied and why they've been denied. Because some of us have had issues where, like Councilman Slife, he talks about it a lot, where they won't take his folks to Cleveland Clinic or UH, right? And because it's too far, they say. You know, so I'm interested to see what their, and give us a parameters program, what radius that they follow, you know, what other, you know, guidelines are set as relates to the rides that they are, when they're determining who they can pick up and who they can drop off. I know they aren't RTA, but there still should be, you know, I mean, if we're funding this and we want them to go a certain distance, then, you know, I suspect they should go a certain distance, right? So we like to know the rides denied and if there's a reason why, you know, and particularly if it's for, you know, distance as well. And, you know, so he gives us any information possible. We appreciate that, okay?
And Mr. Chairman, on a personal point of privilege, if possible, I was back in the back room where we're talking about community engagement officers, and if we could just digress, I wanted to ask a couple of questions on that, if that's possible, if the chair would permit.
And what's that topic, sir?
On community engagement officers.
Okay. All right, we can go back there in 1 second, okay?
Okay.
All right, so we're doing that request? Councilman Joe Titram, you got that too as well? All right. Before we go back to, we'll go back to community engagement for a brief moment, and then we'll come back to NDA. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the director, one of the things that, we have had community engagement officers in our community, and I know that they work close with building and housing. One of the things that is a constant problem for me as an elected official is turning in properties and really not getting follow-up responses, not knowing where things are we making any progress? And some of these people, Mr. Chairman, to the director, have become really good at their jobs. Some of them are really efficient, and I find them to be more efficient than some of the people we're actually hired on that's working inside City Hall. So the question comes, Mr. Chairman, because they do help our inspectors. Is there some kind of way where we could develop a little bit more or establish something where they're actually going out there helping us get this work done and having it processed through building and housing? Because right now, Mr. Chairman, every year we are having a problem with getting results. We're looking at buildings, Mr. Chairman, in my neighborhood that are still standing after they have been turned in, not once, but 1,000 times. And they're collapsing. They're now collapsed. The roof is caved in. We screamed about the possibility that the roof is going to cave in. Then the roof caved in. Then we screamed about the possibility that the bricks would be on the sidewalk. Now the bricks are on the sidewalk. Then we talked about the walls caving in now next, and the walls have caved in. And Mr. Chairman, this is something that goes back 30-some years. I don't know why we can't get a handful of these issues resolved in a more timely, efficient, and effective manner.
Assistant Director,
Certainly, to the chair. Councilman, two of the things that were spoken about here previously was about following up and kind of re-educating, updating council as to the role of this department. So distinguished lady, Councilwoman Spencer, asked that we have that during the course of the summer, so we will. And at that point, the new bureau chief, Ms. Erin Miller-Tate, will be more up to speed about what's going on with community engagement. I will reemphasize, though, what A.D. Wacker said, that their primary impetus is to be really in the engagement piece, really working with the citizens in helping them get the very help that we talked about yesterday, navigating the applications. So that is still their priority, but they do still live and breathe in the CDCs and give assistance to the CDCs in that piece, but it does fall secondary to engaging with the citizens. So I don't want to speak to building and housing. That hasn't been my role in quite some time, but we can continue to maintain the relationship with them and get some ideas from them, be thought partners on what they might need our assistance in.
And then just, if I may humbly suggest, right, because one of the things that's really frustrating for me as an elected official down here, as a human being on this planet, is just sitting here talking about the same thing every year, right? So the question is, how do we really get it done? And it's one of the things why I like Director Alyssa Hernandez. So she's thinking outside the box. She's looking at different ways and means to approach a situation or a problem, and then try to come up with some viable solutions on not just sitting here, just letting it be what it is. So this is the same thing, Mr. Chairman, that we're having with building and housing. It is a problem. Mm-hmm. It's a massive, major issue. It needs to be restructured, turned around, maybe cleaned completely out and start it all over again, whatever it takes. Because if we have a property, I done told you about that almost 1,000 times, and it's still there, it's still an eyesore. You mean you tell me we can't do nothing with that one property? Is the guy rich? Is he wealthy? Has he threatened the city? Does he have $1 billion in the bank? Is he Donald Trump? What is it that we can't get this particular property I'm sorry for the extra theatrics there. I like it a little bit. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, what can we do here to resolve something as simple as this right here on a main road that's right in the middle, dead smack in the heart of my neighborhood, Mr. Chairman? So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we, as the council, work with you all to streamline the law so that we can get a hybrid in place so that we can bring on people who will come and do the work. Maybe the ones that's in there are too old. Maybe we need to get some young workers out there. I don't know, but it's something. And maybe they're not too old. Maybe the old ones are the best ones. Who knows? But whatever the issue is, we need to go into this department like a fine-tooth comb, find out where our problems and issues are. If it's an issue on the union side, then we need to address it. So it's not an issue where we should not get granular and get our skin in the game. Because at the end of the day, what is at stake here is our neighborhoods. And our neighborhoods are falling down. And we have over 100 inspectors. And I'm not seeing anything done to just 5 properties. I've took 5 properties. And I've been asking about these same 5 properties and still haven't been able to get anywhere on those 5 properties. So I don't mind working with your department and building and housing and talking about how we streamline the process, maybe create some kind of hybrid operation where we can get more output out there in terms of giving tickets. And I have no problem, Mr. Chairman, with these engagement officers trying to find resources and help our citizens. I think that's noble. I think that's important to do. But yet at the same time, we see Shaker Heights right next to our border, and they don't play around with their housing stock. They keep their housing stock strong. And the same thing with Maple Heights, and the same thing with Garfield. So we have to be competitive, Mr. Chairman. Right now, we have a rot in the system, and all of our communities are showing that rot. And that part of that rot is we shouldn't be paying for a service we're not receiving. So I don't mind, Mr. Chairman, we work together to see what could potentially be done with the legislation to create that hybrid proposition.
Got it, Councilman. Okay. Thank you. Councilman Starr.
Thank you, Chairman, and Community Development, but this is one of the issues that I do have. I do have a few questions that I definitely want to ask, but just for clarification, through the chair to the table, the $12,472,630,000 for neighborhood development activities, I know the breakdown from the purposes, the proposed uses is around that 7.6 million. Can you please, to the table, explain what are we doing with the other $4,872,630?
Director, Jeff?
Through the chair to the councilman, that 4.8 million is unspent funds by members of this, by all the wards.
All right, so let me make sure I get this understood. Each council member, 17 wards split, each received $435,294 in each ward. When I break down the numbers of that, that breaks down to that $7.4 million. But then on this top of it, it's showing that we have $12 million for this overall program. So the difference between that two and adding that $200,000 for the senior transportation connection makes that $7.6 million, which leaves $4.8 million. So what is the $4.8 million just sitting in the bank?
To the chair to the councilman, the 4.8 million is unspent funds. It's the aggregate dollar amount of unspent funds of all the wards. So your amount of unspent funds is different from Ward 17, Ward 15. They're
It's uncontracted, right?
and it's uncontracted. Yes.
There's no PIF.
So, Councilman, on 2-3,
Yes.
what he's trying to tell you, if you look at 2.3, the budget category program area,
Yeah.
you see CDBG at the top,
Yes, sir.
prior year funds.
Correct.
So if you go down to neighborhood development grants and under number 4,
I see it.
you see the 2024 allocation, and then you see the prior year funds that are unspent with no current contract on.
So do we contract in the beginning with the plans for that money and it just doesn't get spent?
So to the chair, to the councilman, so that is the balance of funds that has been allocated over the past number of years to NDA. And we have not received PIFs in order to be able to contract any of that money. So we have no proposals. It's just sitting there and they count, waiting for whichever ward who has those balances to, assign them and ask community development to contract them.
And so, Councilman, if I could jump in. Director, just so we're clear, everyone's clear and those who are listening, the 4.8 million is a culmination of across the 17 wards that remains that have not been proposed use for, right?
That is correct.
Okay, Councilman.
Okay, because I'm making sure I understand, because when I divide 7.6 million, divided by 17, that get us close to that $435,000. So based to my knowledge, we should be adding that additional 4.8 million to be able to get some things done,
So
if I'm hearing it right, to the chair.
To the councilman, those funds have been divided previously. It's whether or not that
been
board or
used.
council person actually used it. So
I got you.
it's sitting in there.
So through the years, adding up to the bank, and that's probably why HUD be coming down on the city, because we have unspent funds in our budget from previous grants or contracts that was given out to the city. And whatever reason we didn't spend the funds, we go back for the same similar contract every year, and they're looking and saying, well, you already got 5 million. Why are you coming back for 12 million when you should be coming back for 8 million or 7 million? Through the chair, correct?
They don't ask why we're coming back for more money. They just say you haven't spent your money, and it could be a risk of timeliness if we don't get the money spent. We have a 7-year horizon, which seems like a lot, but we try to get as much of these funds spent and not even get close to the 7 years. But this 4.8 million is really affecting our timeliness across the whole program. It requires other programs to either spend or accelerate spending in a way that is really becoming very challenging. And as a result, we'll probably miss timeliness if this number doesn't improve.
Okay, so to the chair.
Clarification, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman.
Just so when you say just make sure I'm hearing you right. Are you talking about the funds that are distributed to the council members is becoming an issue?
It becomes the amount that's there, because we're required to spend a certain amount every year in order to achieve timeliness. So anything that's really not being spent actively, we need to make up in other areas. And sometimes we just don't have other program spending, can't spend quicker to offset this balance.
So Mr. Chairman, and then I would like to come back because I don't want to take up my colleagues'
I'll put you back
time.
on the list.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Starr.
Thank you. So just from my knowledge, to make sure I understand right, because I've been reading, studying this the last 31 months. The Neighborhood Development Activities Program, NDA, supports housing, public services, commercial services, and other CDBG eligible activities that to provide a direct benefit to low and moderate income areas and residents. So through the chair to the table, is it safe to say we have a $4.8 million unspent money is because we're not focused this type of funding into those low and moderate income areas and residents, which creates a problem for us to have unspent dollars? Through the chair?
So through the chair to the councilman and the committee as a whole, those are funds which we have not received a PIF from the council person in order to do anything with. So those funds are just waiting for the council's action.
Right, but Director, what he's saying is that, and if Councilman, if I can.
Yes.
What he's saying is that from the beginning, should it have even went to, it been designated to the place that it was designated to be used, is his point. Is the problem is that it's going to neighborhoods or communities or wards where they really can't be used, right? And, that's could be causing a problem why some of the dollars aren't, being spent as timely or in a way that, you all would like them to be spent, because just some communities just cannot use them, right? And it just don't work for a lot of the, needs of the neighborhoods today. Councilman?
Yes, and that is correct, because when I look at it from the usage models, and I did look on HUD website, and I noticed that they have around 98 to 100 different activities that you can have from CDBG, and I know we've been strategizing to get our department correctly in compliance to be able to use the things. What I don't understand is, you know, I'm coming from an area where we have a lot of low and moderate income area where we have usage. But it's like we have money sitting in the bank when I'm like, I have properties that need to be renovated, housing that need to be updated, upgraded. There's different ways that we can use this funding that was designed for my type of area that I service, and we're not getting the same equity. I know everybody like that equality, you know, and try to spread everything across the board, which is fine, but that does not solve the problems that neighborhoods that have been neglected for so long. Like, it's sad in my heart that we're still today in 2024 dealing with the same issue that Carl Stokes dealt with and was trying to figure out in 1968 when he became the mayor. The same issues when the federal government threatened to take, and where they actually took CDBG funding from the city of Cleveland due to this similar things. And if we're not going to look at history and get an understanding, it's just sad to me. So my question is, through the chair, is what is the total number of market rate and affordable housing units built in Cleveland during the last 10 years and the number of CDBG funded affordable units? Do we have data like that?
Through the chair, we certainly can provide data along those lines.
And then also, I would love to see if we can have a CD report showing how much community development block grant funding each community development corporation received during the last 10 years, as a point of question too. And I definitely will email this over. I know our staff have some of these questions that I sent to them earlier this year. I'll re-forward it over. But then also, I would like to know how much community development block grant funding CDBG was awarded to non-community development corporations and organizations, and how much unspent CDBG does each council member have? And I think the breakdown of that $4 million determines that 4.8 left over is determine how much has been done left. And also to my colleagues, we need to just figure out a better strategy. I understand that we use CDBG for different purposes and focuses in our neighborhood, in which I never am on the table, on the floor to say, take resources of funding from a different neighborhood. But what I'm trying to say is, how do we figure out a strategy that work best so we won't be having a balance of $4.8 million that is not being used? When you look at my neighborhood, who have all of the impoverished area, my neighborhood who have a lot of senior homes and senior residents, but then my residents have a lot of single parents, young parents, living in poverty, medium income, $12,000, who can actually use this money to be able to turn the needle. We can't keep saying we put all poor people in one area. So I'm always advocating and fighting for poor people to get a chance to get the support that they need. So what we must do is come up with a different strategy to address these, because I'm tired of seeing different developers who got money using some of our money, the Brett Favre, I'm gonna call it the Brett Favre. When everybody used poor people money to be able to get their gain. And that is not right, and that is not helping. That is not turning the needle to everything. So when you got poor people living in a poor neighborhood, not getting the resources that are available, when they getting redirected in certain focuses that doesn't fit the need of those people to help them, of course they're gonna live in survival mode. Of course they're gonna start preying on each other. Of course they don't start doing everything when they didn't get the resources. And as I wrap up, Chair, you know, the city has failed to use HUD funds to affirmatively further the fair housing. The city's current CDBG strategy is inconsistent with the program's objectives, in particular to leveraging funds to create transformative community impact and improving the lives of low and moderate income residents. And that is the fault of us as members of council for not being strategic and strategy. And what I will say is this: we the board of directors of the city. We are the board of directors of the city. The mayor and the administration are the president, CEO, executive director of the city. So if it ain't done right and we wanted to do right, we have the authority to make things right. We have that authority, but we're still stuck in something that we inherited a seat, inherited something from so long ago that we don't even have the courage to make things right. And this is the courage to make things right for poor people. And I'm not talking about race things, because poor people don't have a color. And at the end of the day, poor people, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, brown, however you want to look at them, I fight for those people because that's where I come from. So I'm really, really sad that we have not figured out solutions, but I'm looking for us to say, like, what is right? We can still figure out how to carve out $7 million and split it in a different equitable way for the general fund. Shoot, whenever people that got money want things, they get what they want. Whenever people want to figure out ways to leverage another 10 million here, 10 million there, at the end of the year, we find a way to have that money. So if we saying that we want to make sure we can use it, and you're not being one of the council members saying, I got this community development block grant money, telling my CDC to hire another staff, just hire another staff, hire another staff, that is not right. When we should be able to have a different strategy to do those things, to get those CDCs what they needed, but also understanding that the CDC model was created to underfund the organization to be able to have these demands for them to complete all these assignments without the resources. So the CDBG is not the way to solve the problems and issues with our community development corporations. The issue that we have to do is figure out how do we strategize and leverage those private sectors to be able to get more involved, and also understand we're one of the few cities with 3 major sports teams. There's ways to get people at the table. And that's why I love Carl Stokes. When the banks wasn't lending to people in poor neighborhoods, he threatened to pull the money out of those banks and put them in smaller institutions. And guess what happened? Every national president of these banks came to the city to want to talk about different strategy. And that's how you have people who were not looking like me, living in central neighborhood, started lending to be able to go into a Glenville, go into a northeast side neighborhoods and different southeast neighborhoods, and not live in poverty. And we have failed since 1968 to correct this, and I'm willing to work with anyone to get this, but we can't keep saying this is cool, because it's not, and we got $4.8 million that we can't spend in our neighborhood when I got poor people in my neighborhood who need these resources, but they ain't getting it because we being selfish and not doing what's right. And I yell, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Councilman Starr. Hear you loud and clear. You know, this is a discussion we've been having for quite some time. You know, the way these funds are allocated across the different wards equally, the need isn't equal across the ward, which prompted, conversations that have been having, and meetings have been having more recently, regarding a better way to fund development corporations in our communities. There's been several meetings had to look at how we, fund CDCs and fund these type of neighborhood development activities differently. Councilman McCormick, working with an outside partner to discuss those ways. And so I'm hopeful that, as we continue through this process, because this obviously won't be changed today, but as we continue through the process, that we really make a decision on the direction that we're going to go in. Councilman McCormick.
No, I thank you so much, Chairman. And yeah, we've had many meetings on this, and a lot of members, most members have been a part of those, so I won't reiterate all that. But yeah, I'm happy to discuss it any further with anyone who wants more information, and we are continuing conversations with the Mayor's administration. Actually, a meeting on Friday about the topic this Friday, so it's moving along. Most members here have been in those conversations, but if anyone wants to learn more, I am open and available. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, that's important. For those who are listening as well, Councilman Starr is right, and also in response to that, his comments and others have been, saying the same thing for quite some time is why, this group has been created with myself, Councilman McCormick, and others, President Griffin, members of administration, outside entities as well, CD, to work together to figure out, a different way to fund these activities throughout our neighborhoods, because there's so much need in the neighborhood where these funds can really go, that can go toward and do a lot of good, right? But we also need to not forget about the other communities that still need some level of help as well. All right, and so these discussions are very, very important. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. You know, this has been a discussion that I've had hours and hours and hours of conversation about with members of council who no longer sit on the table about how slow and lethargic the process is in terms of being able to get, now it's not the case today, but in years past, because I think that the Community Development Department, you know, certainly give kudos where kudos deserve to be given, has improved their processes from yesteryears. There was a time when I talked to Kerry McCormick and they couldn't get a turtle to move 2 inches at one point when he first came in to Cleveland City Council. And I just think that, Mr. Chairman, that this is a issue that goes all the way back. These programs were fundamentally created to help improve neighborhoods that are impoverished, that are poor, communities that have a number of major issues in them. And what we've seen, Mr. Chairman, over the space of time through Congress and through the Republicans, restricting these dollars each year, making them almost impossible to use for the very purpose they were intended to be used for. And so I don't think it's just an issue of equal distribution. I just think that it is very difficult using block grant money, period. And you can be in the most impoverished neighborhood, and I can just give, say, for an example, and first let me just say this, I love Richard Starr and how he fights. I think that's important that you keep that spirit of fight in you, because that's why your people sent you down here is to fight for them. But if we gave you all $4 million tomorrow to spend into the neighborhood, because these rules are so encumbered, because we have encumbered ourselves in addition to the federal government encumbering us on how we can use these funds, it makes it almost impossible. And for citizens in my neighborhood, Mr. Chairman, they always argue I have to give my life information over. So once I've given all of this information, if I get one thing wrong, I have to do this entire process. And that's why we were talking about these various different programs that we have for senior citizens, and the senior citizens, like the SHAP program. They never get an opportunity to get into these programs because the money is gone or because it's so encumbered. They have to just about, Mr. Chairman, be desolate, broke, ran over, shot several times, hanging on life support, in order for them just to get one red penny. I'll yield, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Richard Starr.
Thank you, Chair, and to the Chair, to my colleague. Do you know that the HUD eligible guidelines and categories for activities, there's 110 items, but we in the city of Cleveland only use 3? So when you say that $4 million or that all that money, I can spend it within a month of what the service needs in Ward 5. So there's different strategies. If you look at it from the activities and eligible, there's 110 different activities that you can use CDBG. Now, I don't know why we have a limit or why we do that in the city. I know the Community Development Department is reorganizing, possibly to get to more staff to be able to do more based on their capacity. But based on the guidelines, how these dollars can be spent, there's 110 different ways you can use this. So there are different strategies out there. We just got to be strategic and intentional on how getting it there. And I just thank you.
Right, and then that's important, Mr. Chairman. You know, that we have other options, right? But even if we have 1,000 options, the problem is that we still have to take it through this bureaucracy, right? So you have to have the world's best executive director on the planet who knows how to navigate these things, Mr. Chairman. And this is money that doesn't necessarily come right directly to the CDC. Because if they get one red penny or one nickel wrong, if their numbers are not right, our system makes them go back and start all over again. And I've heard all sorts of horror stories, Mr. Chairman, from various different executive directors throughout the city of Cleveland on how difficult this has been and how needing to rely on these funds have not it has been so difficult that they have to find other ways because they can't seem to wait for the money. And the problem, Mr. Chairman, is if I'm spending $25,000 or $50,000 or $75,000 a month in block grants, and then I'm 6 months behind in my payments, I'm in trouble. So it's just like any business and any operation in terms of cash flow. These organizations, these local development corporations, Mr. Chairman, to my distinguished gentleman, Mr. Starr, cannot survive off of the block grant funds. The block grant funds, the time it processes it. We saw a short film yesterday about how the government gives this money and how slow it moves to us. Then we go into contract agreements. Before we even get there, HUD may have changed it, and now the company or corporation can't receive that 100 or 150,000, so they're out. So they have to take it on the chin, the loss of those resources. And Mr. Chairman, I've heard so much about this, so that's why I'm glad that you and Mr. McCormick are working together with this committee to talk about how we kind of resolve this issue. And Mr. Chairman, then the question becomes when? Because I know we've been talking about this since Kevin Kelly was the president of Cleveland City Council. And we've been talking about this before Kevin Kelly was the president of the City Council. This goes all the way back to Jay Westbrook and the difficulties of using block grant money. So I guess
Are you asking me?
Hey,
Oh, okay.
whoever can help me get rid of the block grant, and let me
I'm
just
with
say
you.
this, and let me say this, Mr. Chairman, we spend all our money. So the issue basically for me, and this is just to say to my colleague down at the table, if these funds were initially used the way they were initially supposed to be used way back when, and it wasn't encumbered, and it wasn't all this politics and all this nonsense and politics across this table over the space of time, we shouldn't be carrying the distinction as one of the most impoverished cities in the United States. So for me, Mr. Chairman, it's like sitting here at the table again talking about it looks like the roof is going to cave in. Can you do something building and housing? Building and housing, it looks like, this is happening. Can you do something building and housing? And so it's not until we have carried the distinction as being the second most impoverished city in the United States. And once, Mr. Chairman, we held the title as #1 most impoverished city in the United States of America. So for me, sitting here at this end of this table, I don't want to hear that. I want to be able to see how we can get those funds out so we can help all of our citizens. And to my distinguished colleague, half of my neighborhood is now impoverished. And when I was here 30-some years ago, it was hard beat to find areas where we could use block grant money. And I was having my hardest time struggling to use block grant money for various different census tracts. There's only a handful. Now, half of my neighborhood and another third is in the danger zone. So that's just where we have gotten as a city, where you've gotten all of your strong African-American communities like Glenville, when we go to Mount Pleasant, and when we look over here at Seville and Miles and Union, and then we start moving farther up into the Lee Harvard neighborhood, it's a major issue. So, Mr. Chairman, if we had to evaluate over the years, have block grant money fundamentally helped the city of Cleveland, I would say no. It has not helped us be able to get to where we need to go. And so with the committee, Mr. Chairman, with your leadership and McCormick's leadership, we can take this money and say, you keep the $4 million. And we have transfer dollars. So we know every year we have 40 to 42 to 45 million. We can just swap it out right there. Take the money from the transfer. We have those resources. They're not encumbered with all these rules. And we can really get on the street and really start helping people. Because when you have 15 to 20 people looking at every line item from every single organization that you're on, and someone picks out a little issue here and there because it didn't follow first their protocol and then didn't follow this protocol and it didn't follow the federal government protocol, you'll never be able to get these monies out. This has been a slow kill to the citizens of the city of Cleveland. It has given a false hope. And so at the end of the day, when you have false hope, you hoping that it's going to come, but it never comes. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm excited about the work that the committee is doing, and I look for your leadership to help us get where we need to go.
Sounds good, Councilman. Thank you. I'll be a fool to give a timeline on when something is going to happen, But just know that myself, Councilman McCormick, President Griffin, and others are working on the situation to find a resolve, as well. Go ahead, Councilman.
No, Chairman, I'm happy to just say that the goal is next budget season. So
What is it?
meaning our next budget season.
Okay.
So we've already gone. We
You're a
just
little more
went through this
bold than
budget
I
season.
am, I guess.
No, I
Okay.
like.
I mean, no,
that
I'll say the
gotta be
goal.
bold.
I mean,
Gotta say it.
I'm with you. I'm not going to say it absolutely will. I mean, we know in this.
But that's the
business
goal,
that- That's the goal. Yeah.
All right, thank you,
You got
Councilman.
my hands, Mr. McCormick and Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, okay, we're going to, yes, Councilwoman Swenson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to sneak in here with a question. I wanted to clarify, currently, we're only discussing 5-1, correct?
Correct.
We haven't moved on. All right.
You have not.
But thank you. And I also wanted to take an opportunity with Ms. Anderson at the table. I know that for years we referred to her as Commissioner Anderson, but
She's still commissioner,
just
right?
wanting to make sure that
Chief.
there's, in line with this reorg that we've been talking about previously and over the past couple of days, I wanted to clarify through the chair Ms. Anderson's current title and role with the reorganization of the department.
Commissioner.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, I am now the Bureau Chief of Enterprise Operations, which is essentially the support network for the department, handling the functions of accounting, budget, strategic data analysis, and legislation. So the work of the other aspects that had been classified under administrative services, which are really more aligned with programming, have been transferred to the bureaus of emerging programs and legacy programs. So during the transition, I will continue to support those program areas until bureau chiefs are in position and acclimated to the work.
Okay, thank you. I'm mostly following. And I know that right now we're not looking at a budget for Enterprise Operations Bureau, so I'll put a pin in that. Maybe would be interested in coming back and understanding a little bit more about what is now becoming the Enterprise Operations Bureau. But because where we are in the budget book, I believe we are referring to the Bureau of Program Operations, and I wanted to clarify through the chair, sounds like the Program Operations Bureau is broken down into emerging programs and legacy programs. Is that accurate through the chair?
That is correct. Actually, Tony, that's your shop.
It's fine. To the chair, yes, those are two of the areas within the Bureau of Program Operations. We've identified the bureau chief. She is actually, we're still waiting for her start date. It's in background checks right now.
So through the chair, a chief has been identified, a bureau chief has been identified for this Program Operations Bureau. Through the chair, have these two, who would be overseeing the legacy programs and the emerging programs?
To the chair, the manager of legacy is Deborah Prater, manager, and emerging is Gina Ventre.
Okay, that is Gina.
Yes.
So basically, emerging is ARPA, in large part.
To
All
the
right.
chair, yes, in
All
large
right.
part.
All right. Listen, this is a lot of new lingo. I appreciate what y'all are trying to do, but, it's a lot of change. So I will just say that it sounds to me like what we're looking at today primarily, when I'm looking at 5-1 and the next few pages, it's this legacy programs work. And Bureau Chief Anderson is here as that bridge, but this will be the responsibility of Ms. Prater and the future bureau chief, through the chair.
To the chair, that's correct. And to the chair, if I may, I formally appreciate the fact that Bureau Chief Anderson has been a go-to person for me during this time period, as well as Assistant Director Wacker. So I just want to formally acknowledge them.
That sounds great. And Mr. Chair, I'll just also, for the good of the order, as we're wrapping up and I thought that was great discussion from our colleagues about the neighborhood development activities from Councilman Starr, McCormick, Jones. I really appreciate what my colleagues offered, so I won't repeat any of that. But just for the good of the order, when we're talking about funding for community development corporations, there are two buckets. And we've just discussed the NDA, which you pointed out, Mr. Chair, is on 2-3 on the budget. But then, there's also the CDC activity grants, which I think we're talking about next. So I just think, this stuff is complicated enough that I want to make sure as we continue the discussion together that all the dots are being connected, because it's, always a learning moment. So, thank you.
All right, you got it. We're going to move on to the next section. All right, send up further questions regarding 5.1. We're going to move on to 5.2, CDC activity grants. Director.
Yes, thank you. So on 5.2, you'll see that the proposed budget for this coming year is 1.8 million and change for CDC activity grants. This year, we're actually doing things a little differently. Typically, we would do a request for proposals, and we competitively score all the CDCs. This year, we are using last year's competitive process and doing amendments to this year's grants. There's a number of reasons for that. There was a change at CNP in their funding structure that caused the CDCs to really shift in how and respond to that. We had a desire to sort of streamline some of the process this year, and just doing amendments to existing contracts was a lower hurdle, both on the CDC side, but also for our department side as we're doing this reorg. And for the most part, CDCs have already been awarded funding. They've been notified. We've drafted amendments for most of the contracts. We're still waiting on some budget numbers from a few, 3 or 4 CDCs. But we're in a very good position this year to get, upon passage of this legislation, to get amendments out for signature if you fund the competitive award at the amount that's listed here.
All right, got it. So we are the competitive CDC activity grant. The total is, what's the total that'll be allocated this year?
So the total this year is 1.8 million to CDCs. That's obviously broken up typically around with 15 CDCs. Funding ranges from around 100,000. I think the largest is, that is the largest, right, from the competitive side? The grant amounts? Yeah. Yeah, so, but most of them get around, I think, 60 to 70,000 from our competitive process. The rest really is funded solely through the NDA amounts awarded by council.
Got it. So on 5.2, you have current grant year 2023 budget $6.2 million, actual 3.3. Can you explain what that amount is versus below 4.5 million activity competitive grant?
So it's not a reduction. So that's the competitive amount from the department with the council funds included. So last year, 6.2 million was contracted with CDCs. That included the council awards plus our department award.
Okay. And the 4.5, for clarity, can you explain what the 4.5 is?
It's similar from 2022. That was the amount contracted for CDCs for that calendar year.
Got it. NDA plus activity,
right.
Competitive grants. Okay, got it. Is there a reason why we don't have in this packet the grant awards for ECDCs like we normally have?
We can provide last year's process or memo. This year, we're doing amendments to the contract. We're not doing the competitive process this year, so there's no memo to award funding. We just took last year's awards and applied them
So it'll be
as
the
an
same
amendment.
award as last year?
Correct.
Okay. So no change in awards. Whatever you got last year, you'll get the same award, even if you don't fulfill your commitments that you said you would last year? So we're just gonna, so if a person said they're gonna do 15 units and did one, because I'm sure I can speak of a few, and you're gonna just continue to give them $100,000 or $85,000, the ranges differ, and they did not meet any of the proposed goals or accomplishments for that year.
So there's trade-offs. We are monitoring. We don't have, we work with every CDC to make sure that they have accomplishments, because it is impossible to close out a contract with HUD with zero accomplishments.
So you have to, that means you have to go and do.
So we work with CDCs. We do a lot of outreach, hand-holding. If there's a need to really intervene, we do that. You know, we do see CDC as partners. There are challenges that occur in the field, and we look to address those challenges, not to punish organizations as a result. So,
Okay. Councilwoman Spencer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to reference 2-3 in the budget, and just, so really, we're talking about a little more than $1 million in new funds this year, and the 1.8 comes from a combination of new funds and prior year funds, through the chair.
that's
Director?
correct. That is correct.
Okay. I think I don't have any further questions, because I know that the bigger questions about CDC funding are in development. So thanks, Mr. Chair.
Got it. Thank you. And what change happened at, what do they call it?
See Cleveland Neighborhood Progress.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, CMP, that prompted you to also make a change?
So I'm probably the poor spokesperson for what the changes were, but significant. They went from a strategic initiative where funding was granted on a very competitive basis to a handful of CDCs, to providing a more, trying to provide a minimum level of support for operating needs across the CDC environment. I think it's well worth having CMP come in and explain the change. I think overall it's probably a net benefit for every CDC, especially CDCs that just weren't competitive in previous rounds of trying to get funding. So we certainly support that. I think it is a good, so I think what CDCs have always complained about CDBG funding, and then rightfully so, and that it is not operating support dollars, it is implementation dollars to getting projects done. I think what CNP now is trying to do is provide that operating support in funding, but also as an organization. Hopefully merging, city, with the restrictions on these being implementation dollars and CNP focusing on the operating support, I think that could be an opportunity for CDCs to really start to change the narrative.
Sure, and we will definitely reach out to CMP and have them come in. I'm interested to understand more about their decision. For me, and I guess my thoughts are, for those who are high functioning, who are, achieving their accomplishments, to now then be, the dollars to be reduced because the need is to support, others who are not meeting accomplishments, so therefore the dollars are a bit more strained, and to spread across to help others. Are we impacting negatively those who, who needs it, but who's also achieving their accomplishments as well? And I know you're not CMP, but
I can't speak for CMP. My only comment would be, these are the challenges of place-based community development. The needs are different everywhere throughout the city, and all desperately critical. It's hard to create one program that can serve all of that.
All right. So please get us a list of last year's activity grant awards. And to be clear, you are just allocating the same number as you did last year, whether or not they achieve their accomplishments?
So through the chair, this is a year of transition. We have new bureau chiefs, we have new everyone, staff, managers. We are looking to obviously come back to the competitive process. This year, it just made a lot of sense that we did an amendment and carried forward what we did last year.
All right, Councilman Jones?
Mr. Chairman, on the request of information, do we have in there where the director can show us where, if that's possible, where the funds are unspent? What areas? What areas are we banking?
Yeah.
You may have some neighborhoods that are banking money. So then.
I sent it to you already.
Did you?
You should
Okay,
have.
so we
You
have,
good.
so it shows every single area?
You got it.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
you got it. All right, any further questions on 5.2? 5-2, rather? All right, we're going to move on to 5-3. It's a citywide grants.
You want to hand this to
Director? Commissioner? Bureau Chief? Somebody.
The Department of Community Development did release a RFP for citywide grants this year. It was released a little later than previous years, but the Program Operations Bureau, Legacy Programs, has received applications from all of the prior year citywide grantees, and I estimate probably 3 new organizations have also submitted applications. All are under review currently, and we expect that funding recommendations will be presented to the director's office within the next 2 weeks.
Got it. And for clarity, you said how many people responded to the RFP for the citywide grants?
I believe the number is approximately 15 organizations.
15 organizations? Is that below or above what we typically see from responders?
It is slightly above.
Slightly above? Okay. All right, and before we move on to the committee regarding the citywide grants, what's the deal with sickle cell? Why couldn't they apply and receive dollars?
So through the chair, or to the chair, so citywide grants obviously are services to the residents as a whole. Given that we have adopted a 10-year housing plan, we really try to align our initiatives by the needs of that housing plan. The $1.2 million is really a small amount based on the needs that we see for housing throughout the city of Cleveland, and it made a lot of sense to narrow the focus of the citywide grants. Therefore, housing is really the primary programs that we fund. Housing services, home repair services, emergency repair like furnace repair are done under our citywide grants. And the only other aspect is technical support. The business is also funded out of citywide grants. The health-related grants is really not, doesn't fall in line with sort of the priorities of what the department is focusing on at the moment.
Okay. They've been supported by the citywide grants in the past. And, for me, as we've had this discussion around other ways to support CDCs, CDC funding, community development funding is not just about, bricks and sticks. It's about the people as well. You have to help support and, uplift the people in these neighborhoods. You can put all the bricks and sticks you want in these neighborhoods, but if the people aren't taken care of, none of it matters, right? And we know that sickle cell, hits a particular area of our community very hard. And so I'm not happy that they are not able to apply for citywide grants because they support people. They help develop people. They keep people moving and going in their lives, who are faced with these situations. We have funding for persons' homes, for support for those who have AIDS. We have support for those who are unsheltered, right? And so I personally don't understand why we don't are not able to support organization that does tremendous work around sickle cell, for them to be able to apply and, be competitive like everyone else as relates to the citywide grants. I hear you on what the current focus of the department is, but the department won't be very successful if you only focus on bricks and sticks. That we have to focus on the people. Hence why community engagement specialists, right, to deal with residents, to deal with the people, to help guide them, to help support them, to handhold with them, to ensure that the needs that they have, that there's resources and solutions that we connect them with, so that way they are better people. Supporting sickle cell anemia organization with the citywide grant, as they've been supporting in the past, does that. It helps the people. So I'm concerned about that. Maybe we probably won't get that resolved this year, but looking to next year, we will be discussing whether the change in support that was made previously to the citywide grant, operation and the way you do that. Is something that we still support, and whether we want to see others have an opportunity to apply and be competitive as it relates to these citywide grants like previously. All right. Councilwoman? Yes.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate what you're bringing up, and I wanted to clarify and/or make the distinction. Are we talking about citywide grants or the public/social service grants? And my question through the chair would be, are those separate RFP processes? Because I'm not sure if what we're talking about here is a public social service grant or citywide, but I definitely am going to need more information about the citywide grantees as well. I know we'll get to that when you turn to the committee.
Sure.
Yeah, to the chair, to the councilwoman. The citywides is a different program than social services.
Yeah.
So citywides, we have focused on the housing and the economic aspects, needs of the city. Social services are your more traditional non-housing type of programs.
Oh, go ahead.
And if I could add as an additional point of clarification to the chairman's point, American Sickle Cell Anemia is an organization that, one of the few that provides citywide outreach, but has historically been funded under the public service grant programming. And we do acknowledge that this body did continue the support of American Sickle Cell by providing NDA funding this year to continue the operations. So we do recognize and appreciate that.
Sure. So let me take a step back. So you cannot, when you talk about citywides and public service, social service, I mean, because they all get,
Right.
tangled together,
Right.
right? And so I wanted to, make my comment as we move through citywide and public service, because to me, both are working citywide, right? They're both are working citywide. They're not just for one particular community. To me, they go hand in hand, because they're both programs that are funded. One is they're both just have particular focuses, but they're both a function that is happening across the city, citywide. All right. And yes, the NDA funding came from City Council. They were not able to, receive support through the competitive process as they once were, in the past. All right, Councilwoman?
Would just, then, I think we'll get to it, but asking whether RFPs went out both for there's two types of citywide, right? But so there's the housing services, et cetera, citywide, and then the social services. Did RFPs go out for both through the chair?
Commissioner, Director?
So through the chair, to the councilwoman, so only citywides went out last year and this year. Social services has been, we've been working on trying to develop a framework that can get, where we don't have always the same organizations, and we want to try and create more of an ecosystem where new organizations get a shot, smaller grants can get a shot in a way that bring these resources more in line with sort of neighborhood needs, as opposed to sort of larger citywide programs on the social service side. It has been a challenging year. It's part of the reorganization. We've worked with two organizations, United Way, United Black Fund, and we've been talking with the Department of Public Health, Department of Aging, trying to re-envision how social services will look like in the coming years has been a real challenge in the past year. Something we're still working on refining. And when we're ready and feel like we have a good revised format, we'll certainly share that with the council and the community at large.
Okay. Thank you. Along that point, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any further questions?
About citywide?
Citywide public service, 5.5-3, 5-7.
Myself back on the list.
All right, go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's looking at, for citywide, looking at 2.3 on the budget, and it looks like it's spread across. I want to make sure I understand how these numbers work. So on 2.3, there's citywide grants under, I guess it's all under the 10-year housing plan, but there's citywide grants under A, strategic initiatives, there's citywide grants under B, safe housing initiatives, and there's citywide grants under C, affordable housing, expansion and preservation, and then D, supporting housing infill development. So I haven't taken the chance to do the math here at the table, but if were I to do that, would all those numbers add up to this 1.293 million on 5-3?
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Can a distinguished lady tell me where she's reading from?
Yeah, so we're looking both at 5-3 and 5-7, which are two types of citywide grants, but specifically, I'm on now 2-3 as well, which is the budget, because it appears that the citywide grants are kind of spread across a number of different initiatives, and I want to make sure I understand the numbers there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the distinguished lady.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilwoman, Jeff Kacharski just rechecked the math, and those are the three numbers you see do add up to the total that you see on 5.2. They're broken out that way largely because
5.3.
5.3.
Okay.
They're broken out that way because of how our annual action plan is structured and our consolidated plan is structured. So it really is, we tell HUD that we are doing programming under strategic initiatives, programming under safe housing initiatives, program under affordable housing and expansion and preservation, and then also supporting of housing infill development. So that's, we don't tell them we're doing a citywide program. We're telling them specifically how those dollars are going to be spent in the community.
Okay, so if I'm looking again at 2.3, it's actually, the math is not as bad as I thought it was. But you have in terms of new money, 2024 allocation, you have 139, 184 in 4 places. So that adds up to 556, 736. And so that is through the chair is 556, 736, the amount of new money available for citywide grants.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that out.
Yeah. So we're talking about $500,000 in new money for citywide grants. Through the chair, does the department have a list of, and I've been doing this for years, so I'm sorry if I'm not retaining this in my memory bank, but I'm not. Who are the organizations who have received them, and or sounds like awardees will be announced in the relatively near future? I think it would be of interest to see who is competing for. So approximately 15 organizations are competing for around $550,000 in citywide grants. I think it would be interesting to see who we're funding with that resource through the chair.
Through the chair to the councilwoman, We have not assembled a list of pending proposals, but we can certainly provide that to the committee, and also a list of organizations that received funding last year. Again, many of the organizations we are reviewing currently are past grantees.
And just to make sure I capture the intent, again, of these citywide grants, can an example or two be provided of organizations that have consistently received funding because they're meeting the expectations of this grant program through the chair?
Through the chair, the citywide organizations, as Assistant Director Wackers explained, are primarily focused on providing housing supportive services and technical support to organizations that assist small businesses. Unlike CDCs, which tend to operate geographically in specific neighborhoods, the citywide grantees provide their services citywide to any eligible organization, business, or individual. So we are talking about organizations such as Community Housing Solutions, the Furnace Program, their Tool Loan Program, Cleveland Restoration Society's Heritage Home Program, Northeast Ohio Hispanic Business Center, Spanish American Committee.
Mr. Chairman, on the point. Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Councilwoman?
Go ahead.
Could you provide the listing of all of those
We-
citywide organizations
get it.
and phone numbers?
Okay. We'll get
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you, and I think that's very helpful to be reminded of the organizations that have historically received funding, and, I know we'll have results for the new RFP later this year, but I would be interested to know, is there a max grant award for the citywide grant program through the chair?
Director, Commissioner?
Through the chair, there is no maximum award.
So there's, okay. There's no, through the chair, there's no cap, or one organization in theory could apply for the full $500,000 and change, in theory. They probably wouldn't do that, but is that,
In theory, and I don't have the list of 2023 awards. That information was provided. Is it available in the book, Jeff?
We'll get it.
We will get it.
yeah, I think so. When we provide the list, just to follow up on that other request, I know Mr. Tytron is making note of, I think it would be of interest to see the 2023 awardees and how much they were awarded out of the total pot. So, all right. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. So please add that to the list, Mr. Tytron, of requests, that we get that from previous year as well. And again, you all don't have a process yet for this year on the public service side, correct? Third party? Okay. So once you figure out that process, please get with Mr. Tytron and myself so that way we are aware of how you intend to proceed with those services. Okay?
Can I get a point on
Yes.
that? All right. Just on the public social service, there's a nonprofit in my ward that did historically receive this funding year over year. For those of us who have worked in the nonprofit realm, lack of predictability of funding is a huge challenge. Lack of ability to predict a funding cycle. So in terms of these public service grants, I want to make sure I understand. So no one can apply right now. Is that what I'm hearing through the chair? But
Commissioner,
no one can
Director.
apply at the moment.
Correct. We have not issued an RFP.
And when does community development typically issue an RFP through the chair?
So for social services, it's typically in the month of February. So we are, and we don't have a timeline at the moment of when we plan on issuing an RFP.
Why is that?
We still are trying to format what the new program will look like. There's been an effort to try and bring in new organizations, provide a different scoring metric that reflects the needs of the communities, and give us greater confidence that we're not just, while predictability is also good, but we also want to make sure that these funds are really laser focused on what Cleveland needs, not just refunding the same programs every year. While we might continue to fund existing programs, we want to have a new framework that reflects what the community needs are.
Councilwoman.
Yeah, I would just say that, my predictability comment has more to do with, I think, not necessarily assuming that the same organization will receive funding at the same amount year over year, but that there is a predictable grant cycle that they can build into their planning. So sounds like this is one that more to come on this one. But yeah, I don't miss working at a nonprofit, Mr. Chair. It was challenging.
Got it. Okay. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The distinguished lady asked some great questions and found some money I didn't see. And so I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, the question I would have is, I looked at, and first of all, let me just thank you for getting the information to us on the snapshots that Tony Tell had put together for you, because that allowed me the opportunity to see where we were at. The next question, Mr. Chairman, or the question I have, Mr. Chairman, for the citywide projects that are here, we don't know where we're going to put the money at, but we do have $500,000 that we will at some point allocate. And that would be based upon, is there any kind of criteria for where those funds will go?
Commissioner.
Through the chair to the councilman, our Legacy Programs Office is finalizing the scoring matrix for citywides. It is being reviewed and probably changed from prior years, again, in an effort to allow for newer organizations to be competitive in that process. In the past experience with the program and achieving accomplishments under federal guidelines had been a major part of the scoring platform. So they, as a section, are taking a hard look at the scoring matrix to, again, be mindful of the fact that these are that we need organizations that can be competitive and productive under those guidelines, but also allow for newer organizations that don't have a funding history with the department to also be competitive as well. We will share that scoring matrix with this body.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the reason why I asked that question is because we started out the conversation about the difficulties of being able to access block grant funds. And when we talk about, that's the reason why I asked for a list of citywide programs. A lot of times, oftentimes, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Anderson, in our community, we might make just a little bit above the bar. I don't care if it's just $100. They will not give us service. So how do we get around to already being impoverished? $5,000 or $10,000 won't make a difference. You're still poor. The monies are being spent for, with inflation today, where it's at, is absolutely have killed out senior citizens on fixed income. Mr. Chairman, I'm having such a major issue in my neighborhood with our senior citizens who can no longer afford to get by on their fixed incomes. And because their incomes are so fixed, Mr. Chairman, they can't even get a step replaced. And for a fact, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Matthews had been trying to get into the program over on the west side that would offer masonry work to get done, but after she went through years and years trying to get assistance, she finally landed there after organization And all she wanted as a senior citizen at her 80-some years of age was to get her front steps done. Because she waited so long, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Anderson, her entire front steps area is just completely collapsed. And the only way, Mr. Chairman, and I think you stated it earlier, is to have those development corporations that are not dependent upon block grant, because the way you have the system rigged now, I hate to say it that way, but the way the system, and you have to say it that way in a sense, is rigged, it doesn't work for local development corporations, and it kills the African American communities. That's one of the reasons why you have the impoverished scenario you have in the city of Cleveland right now, is because of all these encumbered restrictions. So Mr. Chairman, how do we raise the bar to Mrs. Anderson so that citizens who are almost close, give or take $5,000, will still be able to access these programs? Mr. Chairman, it is so hurtful to my soul as a human being to be this close to being able to hold on to something of hope, but can't get there because you just make $100 or $200 more.
Director, Commissioner.
So through the chair to the councilman, I think we all recognize the challenges that our funding has in addressing the needs citywide. We are working on making, obviously, systemic changes that were presented yesterday by the director. I won't go into depth there, but a lot of what you allude to is also just the challenge of having 30 million, while it seems like a lot, the deficit of disinvestment in our neighborhoods is around 300 million each year, that banks are not providing home loans, not providing mortgages, especially in Lee Harvard. We're trying to offset those disinvestments with these investments that the city has. And while we try our best, we're never going to be able to stretch 30 million to 300 million. That's more of an opinion that I have. It is a little bit based on fact and looking at the HMDA data and the lack of investment the banks do. But I do know that what the director is trying to do, in Braiding resources, having one entry point for home repair and home rehab, and looking at home repair as not separate programs, but one overall ecosystem, I think will help change the trajectory, at least for what community development is able to achieve. But at the end of the day, we are looking at ways to really cover the gap of what is a failing private system of banking in the city of Cleveland.
And Mr. Chairman, I hear that because it's sort of like somewhat separate from the actual question here on this here. But first, let me say this, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Wackers for acknowledging that the reasons why the west side and the city of Cleveland, especially on the east side rather, is not getting funding from our financial institutions. Is one of the things, Mr. Chairman, I've always said here at the end of this table, is we have all these banks in the city of Cleveland. All of these financial institutions, we have a number of them in which, you know, we utilize them as bank accounts. We get bonding from a number of these financial institutions. And not to have them here at the table, I'm just appreciative that at least the administration on this side understands it, acknowledges it. But it still doesn't, Mr. Chairman, help me in the way that I need to get help. And that help, Mr. Chairman, is can we, because we know that certain areas need help to stay alive, can we tweak our program here in the city to raise that percentage up so that our citizens will be able to reach that mountaintop and hold on? So and that's like, you know, give or take $5,000. Because if that's the case, there's a great deal of citizens and I'm going to tell you what Ms. Matthews said to me. She says, I have never in all my life as an American citizen asked for anything. I haven't never asked for nothing. Now that I'm 80 years old and on a fixed income, I just want to get my steps done. That's all I want, Councilman. Can you please help me get my steps done, Councilman Joe Jones? That's all I want. I ain't asked you for nothing, and I've always voted and voted on every election, and this is where it comes down for Democrats who are listening. If we can't deliver services to our people who are in need at their old age, and they're only missing, I think in her case, it was $200. And I couldn't even get the steps fixed. So we put together a special program where I didn't want those monies to be encumbered with and it free of the nonsense to try to help her get her steps. People like that who fall in that zone where you won't help them because they're just not broke enough. And so can we do something like that for Ward 1, for the citizens of Ward 1?
So through the chair, so the one application is really geared less about qualifying for a particular program and those income limits, and really about, okay, what are the needs of this applicant? We know there are a variety of programs that are funded through the city of Cleveland, funded by other entities that have a variety of qualifications. That person probably qualifies for a program that can address their needs, and we should put them in contact with that program rather than that person having to navigate this system.
Well, that's great. So can we talk after so I can get all of that so that I can start working on that right away? I appreciate that. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anything else from the committee regarding citywide grants 5-3 or the public/social service 5.7? Anything further on those two? All right, seeing nothing further on those two, we're going to move on. So, Director, Commissioner, we've made several requests for information. We don't need the dashboards. We have that information that was sent to Tony Tell, and so that was sent out to members in terms of, and also balances across the council as well. I will tell you that several members have projects that they are, saving dollars for, to build up the pot, since that is the only real source of a larger pot of revenues for each ward that they can use to apply towards projects. And so I would encourage you to reach out to the different members and say, hey, how can we work with you to get these dollars out the door, and in particular if there's something that they're saving the dollars for. Maybe there's another situation that the department has that they can be assistance, provide assistance to the council member in those projects. All right. Please make sure we get those information we requested yesterday and today. Some were requested by ward, some were citywide. Please get that information to us. Also, can you get us a list of everyone who responded to the RFP that was put out for the citywide grants as well? And please share the matrix that you indicated today at the table as well. As we discussed, there are ongoing conversations about new revenue sources to support neighborhood development activities, not just for CDCs, but other neighborhood activities that council members use NDA funds to support. Not all NDA funds go to just a development corporation. They go to other places as well who do community development work throughout our neighborhoods. And so that, again, that discussion is ongoing. Hopefully we'll have a resolution soon, Councilman McCormick, as we work through that process. I know President Griffin is somewhere listening and watching as well. And, are there any final questions or concerns from the committee? Councilwoman?
I have one stray matter, Mr. Chair. Representing the Urban Forestry Commission. So there are two, to make sure I'm on the up and up with this, understanding it. There are two small pots of block grant funding used for urban forestry activities. One we discussed yesterday, which was the Senior Tree Service Program. I don't know if I have the name of that exactly correctly, but Department of Aging does intake, and urban forestry will assist with seniors who have a dangerous tree or tree branch on their property. So that's one. And I believe there is a second amount, I believe that's $75,000 a year. And there's a second amount of money that I believe is $85,000 a year for tree removal on city land bank lots. So, sorry I didn't come a little more prepared with my question. I'm essentially hoping to confirm through you to the administration whether those two dollar amounts are accurate and where they are in this CDBG budget.
Jeff?
One moment.
Sorry to pop that on you, Jeff. Chair.
Through the chair to the council person, I'll have to, since we have an abbreviated budget this year, can I get back to you on that? Our intent is to fund those fully, but given the reduction of almost $1 million this year, that might change.
Yeah, to the chair, just to the, I don't foresee any changes with Department of Aging. Land bank has been more challenging with the HUD stance on how we run our land bank. But we are looking at other sources to manage the land bank. So that 85 for the tree removal is probably going to come from a different source of funding. That's not federal.
Okay, that's good to know. I think, yeah, I do believe we did talk about the senior tree work yesterday, and I'm sorry I'm not putting my finger on where that is.
2-4, right there where you are.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay, so it is under public service line item cap. Senior tree trimming service is $75,000. So that appears we are budgeted for and moving forward with. The question of the $85,000 for land bank trees sounds like another source of funds will need to be identified through the chair.
Through the chair, we have identified the source, but there is legislation that would need to come before DPNS before that is solidified.
Okay, so good to hear that there will be some legislation coming up for, to fund this $85,000 annual need for tree removal on city land bank lots. You know, it's urban forestry activities are interesting. I've been so surprised since I joined the council, the volume of concerns I hear from residents in regards to trees, and I think most of my colleagues would agree, whether branches, dead trees, stumps, but certainly the intent of that 85,000 is to remove trees that are a potential danger that happen to be on city land bank land. Therefore, we're responsible for it. So, all right.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So please make sure that we'll be in communication between now and next week to ensure that all the information we ask for is sent back to us. And also we'll get clarification on, well, one, I want to make sure that the senior tree trimming services are still there. Any cuts to the aging services that we provide, we'll amend it and put it back in. We're not going to support a change to the work that agent does and the funds that come from CDBG to support those programs. In fact, there needs to be an increase in the support that we give agent for those programs. And again, as we go through this process, the transition your department, as we look at ways to support some of these functions from general fund dollars, we'll also look at that on our side as well. Whether we increase support for those agent services, from the general fund as we look towards next year's budget process. All right? Okay, Director?
Just want a friendly reminder about amendments.
Yep. So, we're going to move on to the amendments to the ordinance. Yes, you can, sir. Yeah, really only need to read these two.
Can't read this whole thing.
No, you don't read the whole thing.
Which parts?
1 and 2.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Mr. Chair, I sadly offer only these two amendments. Amendment number 1, in section 1, line 3, strike, quote, 20,779,240, end quote, and insert, quote, 19,883,456, end quote. In line 4, strike, quote, 5,462,346, end quote, and insert quote 4,200,829, end quote. In line 4, strike quote 1,856,678 quote, and insert quote 1,826,276 end quote. And in line 6, strike quote 2,356,937 end quote, and insert quote 2,374,534 end quote. Amendment number 2. In section 3, beginning with line 4, strike the remainder of the section in its entirety and insert, and I was going to speed read this for everybody's enjoyment. You're saying I don't have to do that, Mr. Chairman?
You don't need to read, no.
I can read real fast.
Yeah. Everyone, the committee has a copy of the amendment.
This.
We don't need to, it's changing the section, removing that section and entering a new section.
I can blow you away
Everyone
with
has
how
an
fast I
amendment.
can read, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sure.
All right.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
Chair, just to confirm
Yes,
that
sir.
our Assistant Law Director has the content. All right, thank you, Chair.
All right, it's been confirmed. Our Assistant Law Director has the content. Any other discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor? All opposed? Ayes have it. All right, listen, we thank you for these 2 days. On your tablets, you have a file attachment that gives you even more detail on some of the programs. We decided this year to focus, heavily on the home repair, home development, and the CDC NDA activity, because those are 3 of the most complicated areas that we have to deal with, every single day. And the other city programs that offer that we pay for, remember we provided, we had a operation review in this past fall. We talked about a lot of this information. And again, the file attachments, additional information that's on your tablets that can give you even more details about your about the programs that the department offers, okay? And we made several requests, and so we'll have those before we move this on to finance, all right? All right, so no further questions. Ordinance number 166-2024 as amended stands approved. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah. There's always more to do.
So what do you, how much do we get to them, like ASAP versus what we?
All right, meeting adjourned.
My calendar, way I get a full